Hi, it's Nicole, and today I'm going to be talking about what I've been reading for Springathon. I decided to start Springathon with Wanderland by Reddy, and I had quite high hopes for this book, but it just didn't get on with me. And the main reason for that is that I think she's self-described a lot more woo-woo than I am, and that's not I'm not like always put off by that, but I think when it's just a bit too much and it reaches a certain fever pitch, it's just I just can't continue. And I think if I had been reading this, listening to this on audiobook, I probably would have continued, got to the end, and it maybe would have been a very satisfying read. But I think there's just too much stuff where she isn't that interested in the stuff that I'm interested in nature, so she kind of dismisses a lot of the detail in the places that she's in, these forests and coastal areas and all of that stuff. She doesn't really seem to care that much about what things are called or how things work or what lives there or anything like that. She's more interested in communing with this mysterious spirit of nature, and that's not me. I think another thing that I was really interested in with this book is the threads of sort of a, not quite immigrant, I mean, yeah, immigrant story, I guess, in that like she is a brown woman navigating a world that can be unkind to Black and brown women, and also navigating a more specific place in that world, which is the world of nature. Which can be a little unwelcoming sometimes, depending on, it's like this thing of like, what are you doing here? That sort of thing. And I'm interested in that, I'm here for that, but yeah, it was just the woo stuff, just I couldn't keep going with this. Maybe I will eventually when I'm feeling a bit more loosey-goosey, but I'm not at the moment, so no. But then I picked up a book that by all accounts seems quite similar to that one, which is I Belong Here by Anita Sethi. Sethi? And this one is again a South Asian brown woman navigating herself through the nature of the UK. And some similar themes, some similar ideas. I think the title pretty much says it all. I really like that it's set in the same place as me. I think she's a bit more focused in the Lancashire area, but it goes into West Yorkshire, which is where I live. So seeing some of the place names that I'm quite familiar with now is kind of interesting. Obviously I'm not from here and she is from the region, but it's still really, I don't know, I guess because we look other than what people might assume for someone who is able to live here. There are some similar things, like she has received racial abuse. I've been lucky to largely avoid that in most of my time living in the UK, which is great, but I'm very aware that a lot of people aren't able to avoid that. And I'm also very aware of why I'm able to avoid a lot of that. But anyway, I'm only about 20 pages in and I'm really liking this tone a lot better than the other one already. Not only is this tone less woo-woo kind of vibes and a lot more practical, she is interested in what is around her and what things are called and like how things work in a more practical way, and so that's something that really appealed to me about this compared to the other one, and so I'm getting on with this a lot better, but I'll have a lot more to report when I get further into it. The next book that I started for Springathon was an audiobook called Fen, Bog and Swamp by Proulx, and this one I got on with this one. I liked kind of the approach of it, looking at these areas in a global sense, so not just the fens, bogs and swamps of the UK, but also looking at the Americas and looking at just where these kinds of landscapes show up and what their uses are historically, how we relate to these places, how we've used these places, how we've changed these places. All of that stuff was really interesting and I learned a lot. I would say though I wasn't at my best for listening, in the sense that I think I was very distracted while listening to this book. I largely listened to it when I was going for a run and when I was at the gym. And usually it's fine when I'm on a run, I'm pretty able to focus and stuff like that, but in the gym in particular, there are a lot of distractions, there are a lot of other people, there's a lot of like other noise, the radio is on in the gym, and that can be quite distracting. So I don't feel like I gave this book the attention that it deserved necessarily, but I still got a lot out of it. But I think if I were able to pay a little bit more attention, I would be able to have a stronger opinion about it, which I don't. But then that brings us to the two books that I do have quite strong opinions, well, I have opinions about. And the first one is a book that I actually started years ago, I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I picked up The Way Through the Woods and I was really loving this book. It's a book of mourning and mushrooms, basically. So this woman's husband died quite young and unexpectedly, and she ended up taking a beginner mushroom course that they had always wanted to take, and that kind of helped her get through that period, I guess, and make sense of that period. And it's been really interesting, and I love the way that it's formatted, where there's sections that are mostly about the mushrooms and the mushrooming course and things like that, and there are sections that are largely about the mourning and her life with her husband and how her life changed after him. And the actual formatting of the book is such that the bits about mushrooms and whatnot are set in a black serif font, and the bits that are about her mourning are set in a green sans serif. And I just feel like that kind of, I don't know, it's interesting to me where, you know, you would expect the mushroomy plant bit, even though mushrooms aren't a plant, to be set in green and to be maybe the serif, because that feels kind of loosey-goosey like a mushroom, at least in my head, and the more like mourning dour stuff to be set in black, and I guess that would also be more suited to a serif than a sans serif. But anyway, it's just interesting how they decided to format that as a little design thing. Why did I not finish this book when I first started reading it if I was loving it though? The reason is because I think I was reading it either on Scribd or from my library, and I know my library catalogue changed completely at one point, and some books that were on there are no longer on there, and some books that weren't on there are on there now, so I think I lost the access. Or if it was on Scribd when it was still called Scribd and not Everand, I think it probably just left the platform or whatever, and so I didn't get to finish reading it. But as soon as I realized that happened, I knew I needed to get myself a hard copy, which I've done. And the obvious next question is, well, why did it take you like 4 years to get around to that? And the reason is simple. It's because it was really hard to find this hardback, and I don't usually care if something is hardback or not, but I just preferred the hardback cover to the paperback, and so I really wanted to find one of these in hardback, and that was proving impossible for I don't know what reason. But eventually I tracked one down on Wob, and that's what you see in my hands right now. So I'm enjoying the reread. I very rarely ever reread anything, and I very, very, very rarely reread anything that is like that length. Usually if I'm rereading something, it's like, I don't know, 100 pages or something like that. So let that tell you how much I really enjoyed this book. I think as well I'm noticing a theme where I really enjoy books that have both a memoir component as well as just a deep interest. When I read, for example, Britain's Lost Rainforests, it wasn't like a big memoir part to that, but I think the personal experience side of that book and his clear enthusiasm for a thing, I think it's that. It's the clear enthusiasm for a thing that I absolutely love, and this book has that for me. And so I think it's that thing where someone just gets you excited because they love a thing, and that's always going to be a winner in my mind. And so I think that's partly why I get on with this book so much. I think when I was first reading it, I got maybe about 70% of the way in, so this is really a restart for me, and I remember pretty much everything that I'm like reading as she's going along, except for like maybe specific names of mushrooms and details like that, but everything else I'm just enjoying. So this is the winner of Springathon for me. Not that there's supposed to be any winners, but there is now. And then the last book that I've started is The Wilderness Cure by Wilde, and this is an interesting one for me because I feel like it's making me think of a lot of things, a lot of factors and whatnot, as she is trying to live off the land in the UK for an entire year. So she's eating seasonally and just what's available to her, and there are a lot of elements to this that I feel are clearly flawed, but also really interesting. So one thing is she's saying that even if, I don't know, onions are available somewhere else in their season and imported, that would still be a no-no for her because it's not in season in the UK. But she also puts down rules considering the fact that, like, how do we determine what is native and what is not native? Because there were lots of things that were non-native to the UK that were brought over by the Romans, for example. Are we going as far back as Romans? Are we going as far back only as Victorians? Are we going as far back as the, I don't know, Neolithic period people or whatever? I don't know. It kind of highlights these arbitrary things we put in place, I guess, for what we consider to be native, and I guess that also feels like it joins in with some of the immigrant nature stories from earlier, where it's like, how far back do you have to be in a place to be considered native, even as a person? She talks about there being all these fad diets like Paleolithic diet and keto and veganism and this and that and whatever, and about how we work best on seasonal whatever diet. And I feel like that's kind of, that feels like a bit of a tall claim to make, I guess. And it also feels a little bit like, I don't know if you can say that and then like hate on these other diets when it's like, this is just another fad kind of. And people kind of assume that what she's doing equates to being like a paleo diet or something like that, and it's not quite. But I think it feels a little hypocritical for her to be like hating on these other things. And I would need to see some backing for the idea as well that we are better suited to a diet set by people from ages ago, based on like where we are. Like, just because you happen to be from the Siberian region doesn't mean that you're getting all of the nutrients that you need just because you're able to survive in that place. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of feel like about that, but she's not a nutritionist, so I'm not going to this for nutrition advice or anything. This is just kind of, I want to find out about the seasonality of what is in the UK and learn about all the little like anthropological tidbits that she includes and stuff. I find that quite interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about this as I'm reading through it, and I do find it really interesting, and I like the tone, I like the way it's written. So I'm gonna keep on with this one as well, and I'm listening to that one on audiobook, so that's mostly when I go out for a run, or I'm avoiding listening to stuff while I'm in the gym because I've just realized that that doesn't really work as well. That's what I have read and am reading for Springathon. I'm personally extending Springathon into the rest of the month because 2 weeks is just not enough for me, and I'm always behind on everything at the moment. Not usually, but at the moment I seem to be. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and hopefully I can check back in here a little bit more regularly than I have been because, surprise, surprise, I've been missing. And give you an update on my thoughts on some of those books. Yeah, but that's all for now, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.